Enter with pleasure. Enter with pleasure. That's the topic of today's IG Live with Amirah Zaky. Hopefully, he's going to be joining me shortly. She is a UK based sex educator and vaginismus coach, helping women of faith overcome shame and fear to enjoy pleasurable sexual relations with their husband. I'm just waiting for Amirah to join. So yeah, like I said, so Amirah is based in the UK. She's got a really good Instagram page. She definitely checked it out with a lot of informative views and videos. She's got a YouTube page. I think she's just logged in now. So I think I can add her. And yeah, so I just want to have a chat not only about vaginismus and how she's helping women, but also a little bit about her online business. So how do I do this? Bismillah. So I think this should be fine.
Assalamualaikum.
Mashallah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm amazing, thank you. I'm in good health and spirits. Good health and
Alhamdulillah,
spirits.
that's lovely to hear. I'm really excited for today. It's our first time kind of talking like this virtually. So, alhamdulillah.
Yes.
I know we've been messaging, but it's the first time talking to you like this.
Yeah,
So
no,
this is
I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully, I'm sure people are. Not only I think people are going to get a lot out of it, with the great work that you're doing, but also they'll be inspired, hopefully, by not only your work helping women, but also your online platform and the business that you're growing. So there's a lot that I kind of want to cover. Um,
yeah.
just before we start, I kind of gave a very brief introduction to who you are, but do you mind introducing who you are for the benefit of people listening and the work that you do?
Yeah, so obviously I'm Amirah Zaky and I live in London in the UK. I'm married and I have two kids. And I used to work as a high school science teacher and I left my job a few years ago to start my own business. Didn't really know what I was going to do. And after trying a few different things out, I eventually landed in the work that I'm doing now. And alhamdulillah, it's really, really fulfilling.
And what is the work that you're doing now?
The work that I do now is I help women. Sorry, I feel like there's a bit of an echo. Is that just from my side?
I can hear you perfectly. Is it echo from me or from you? Can you hear
No, it's
echo?
from me. It's gone now. It's fine now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so the work that I do is I help women with a condition known as vaginismus. And this condition involves basically where a woman struggles with any form of vaginal penetration, be it during penetrative sex, or be it when she's trying to insert a tampon, or be it when she goes to get like a cervical smear test. So basically, anytime she is trying to have something inserted into her vagina, she finds it either very, very painful or difficult or impossible or all of those things. And the reason I do this work is because it's something that I struggled with myself at the very start of my marriage. And alhamdulillah, it was something that I was eventually able to overcome through educating myself. And then after overcoming it myself, I never really spoke about it after then because it was something that was just kind of between me and my husband. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell my family, and I carried on with my life, started my job, had my kids. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I used to work as a teacher. And then after leaving my job, wanting to start my own business, I was kind of doing a bit of that kind of whole like soul searching type of thing, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I kind of dabbled in a few different businesses and none of them were the one for me. Like they weren't fulfilling, they weren't producing like consistent income, but I kept on searching and searching. And about almost 3 years ago, I think, yeah, 2018, I put a video on YouTube because I kind of had started to grow like a little bit of a following. I think I was getting into the couple of hundreds of followers, and I felt like deep down inside me I was keeping this secret, the secret being that I had vaginismus. And I just, something intuitively was telling me, Amirah, you should tell people about this. I'm sure there are other people out there that are going through this. Tell people just to give them hope that it's possible to overcome it. And I had no intention of turning it into a business. It was literally just, I felt like I didn't want to hold onto it being a secret. I felt like it wasn't something that I needed to be ashamed of. And I really just wanted other women to hear my message and say, I had it, it's normal, you're going to be fine, you're going to overcome it. And subhanAllah, through uploading that video onto YouTube, because when I uploaded it, like I said, I think it was 2018, and I don't think IGTV was out then, and I needed it to be a little bit of a long video. So I put it onto YouTube, and I said to my followers at the time, I've got a secret that I want to share with you. And then I just kind of directed them to my YouTube video. But being YouTube, other people can find that video. And that's what happened. It's like now got like over 48,000 views, and so many women messaged me from that video saying, I'm so glad you put this out there. I'm going through it. Please, can you help me? And as I started getting those messages, I saw, wow, there's so many women that are going through this and that need my help. This is the work that I'm meant to be doing.
MashaAllah. And yeah, just what is the full name of the title of the YouTube, your YouTube channel, and the name of the video so people can check it out? Yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is just my name, so Amirah Zaky, and
Yeah.
the title of the video is My Personal Struggle to Overcome Vaginismus. So I only have 2 videos on my YouTube channel right now, so you'll
Right.
easily find it. So if you just type in my name, it should just come up. I do have the link in my bio, so if you click my bio, there's one for my YouTube channel, and you can check it out there. And if you watch that video, there's been times when I've considered taking the video down because of how awkward I was in the video. So I'm a very different person then to now, and it's only been 3 years, but I really feel like, I remember like in that video I was struggling to say the proper words, like the proper word for like vagina and penis. Like I was really struggling because it was the first time I was having to do that. But now, alhamdulillah, through the work I do, I've kind of grown in confidence in saying those words, and there not being any shame associated with saying, you know, the true anatomical words.
And in your from your experience, you know, coaching and teaching women and your research, how common is vaginismus? The only reason I'm saying this is when I was looking online, and I was looking at some studies, like one said, I think 1 in 10 women in the UK suffer from vaginismus. Another study said between 7 and 17. And then another study was said it depends on the culture of, you know, because there's some cultures where it's more prevalent than others. So from your experience, especially within the Muslim community, first in the UK and then maybe broadly, is it quite a common, I don't want to say disorder, is it a common problem or challenge or struggle that a lot of women are facing?
Yeah, so based on, I also did a little bit of research trying to find the actual statistics, and what I found is it's close to 20%, if not more, of women globally. So obviously that would vary based on country, based on culture, based on religion, that kind of thing. It's definitely a lot more prevalent in Muslim communities, but also religious communities. I found that it's common. Some of my clients are Christian. It's also prevalent in some like South Asian countries, so like in India. It's prevalent in like the Maldives. It's basically all over the world. But in answer to your question, yes, it is more prevalent in certain in women that come from certain cultural or religious backgrounds.
Okay, fair enough. Actually, yeah, 20%. That's a lot, and it also might be a case of, because I remember I went to one workshop. This was maybe about 2017, and someone asked a question about, what did she say? She was asking about GPPPD. I was lost. I didn't know what she meant, and the person responded who was giving the seminar. She said that she's got GPPPD, how to overcome it, this, that, and the other. And it's only after when I actually Googled it and I wanted to find out what was she actually talking about. Was it genital pelvic penetration disorder, which is basically vaginismus, but that's what the DSM classified it in like 2017. And one of the things that I found is that there's people that will use different, especially like jargon or terminology, but they're speaking about the same thing. Even I remember when I was posting about vaginismus, maybe like about 6 months ago, I had some really interesting like responses. What is that? Is that a porn site? Is that a new sexual technique? Is that a superpower? Like people's imaginations run wild because obviously they see vagina, so they think it's linked to women. It might be porn, might be sex, might be sexual practice. So there is a lot of, I can imagine there's a lot of women who are going through it, but because maybe they're not aware of like the official name. And again, some people maybe use different names, or some people might even reach out and just think this is a normal experience, that this is what sex is supposed to feel like for me as a woman, whereas for a man it's supposed to be pleasurable and I'm just supposed to take it. So it's good that, you know, you're not only educating but empowering women to understand not only that this is common, but you can overcome it. That's something which is, again, I think it's really important. In your experience, what are what do you think some of the causes for vaginismus are?
The biggest cause is misinformation, so a lack of education, the spreading of myths about sex, the spreading of myths about the process of a woman losing her virginity, so having sex for the first time. Women tend to kind of grow up, or kind of young girls going into teenage, being then becoming a teenager and then a young adult. They kind of hear stories about what first time sex involves, and they tend to also hear that it's very painful for a woman. So they hear that it's like really pleasurable for a boy or a man to have first time sex, but for a girl it's the opposite, where it's very painful. They tend to kind of hear myths about the hymen breaking, or about there being blood, or about a woman like screaming out in pain from first time sex. So all of these are like horror stories and terrifying stories for a woman to hear. Not all women hear it, but the women that do hear it tend to be the women that end up suffering from vaginismus, or they may not end up suffering from vaginismus, but they do end up experiencing painful first time sex. When they experience painful first time sex, they just assume that now it's over and done with, it's never going to be painful anymore, and then they don't go on to continue having vaginismus. So if a woman had painful first time penetrative sex and it was painful that time, sometimes a woman just assumes, okay, that was my first time, it was meant to be painful, and then they've now overcome that mindset of it's over and done with, it's not going to be painful. So the second or third time they attempt sex, they are going into it looking forward to it, because they're like, it's not going to be painful anymore, I can relax. And as soon as they relax, they don't experience vaginismus. But any time sex is painful, if you're ruling out any kind of physical abnormalities or any kind of medical issues, anytime penetration is painful or difficult, typically it's due to vaginismus, because vaginismus essentially is where a woman's pelvic floor muscles are contracting, causing her vagina to become narrow. And so the narrowing of the vagina is what causes there to be resistance and friction upon entry of an object, be it, like I said, tampon, a penis, or some kind of instrument.
Very well explained. And can you tell us, speak a little bit about some of your courses? I had a quick look on your website. I saw that there was like I think it's like a 90-minute free webinar, and then you've got the marital course that you offer with, I think, the 3 phases. Do you mind giving us a bit of a breakdown about those courses that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 90-minute free webinar, and in that webinar, I go through the process that I take my customers and clients through to help them overcome vaginismus, or to help them overcome painful sex, or to help them prepare for first-time sex, because whatever a woman needs to do to overcome vaginismus is exactly what a woman should be doing to prepare for first-time penetrative sex. So in that webinar, I go through the process and outline my method, and I share as much as I can within 90 minutes of, this is what you can go and do. If you do it on your own and follow the steps, you will overcome painful sex, or you will prevent painful first-time sex. And then at the end of the webinar, I invite people, if they wish to join my course. My course is called Confident Marital Sex, and I called it that because I wanted it to be very clear as to what they were getting. They were purchasing the ability to be confident at having sex, because a woman who's going through vaginismus feels the opposite of confident. She feels a lot of fear. She feels very afraid of having sex. She doesn't feel confident at all. And it's called marital because the work I do involves either women who are married, so they want to have sex with their husband, or some of my customers and clients are not married, but they approach me and say, I know I have a fear of sex. I'm really worried about first-time sex being painful. Can I join your course? Or I'm engaged and I'm going to be married soon and I want to prepare for my wedding night, that kind of thing. Those are the people that my course is for. So either overcoming painful sex or preventing painful sex from happening in the first place. So that's the webinar, that's the course. I also offer private coaching. It's a bit more intensive, a lot more personalized. That is specifically for women who are married and who know they have vaginismus, or they sometimes approach me and say, this is what I'm going through. Do you think I have vaginismus? I'm going through like a questionnaire with them. I kind of help them determine whether it is vaginismus or whether they need to go and seek medical help. And if it's determined that they do have vaginismus, I invite them, if they wish for more personalized support, to work with me privately in the coaching that I do.
Lovely. And Like, if what about for? I know you said you offer courses, or the course is available for women that are engaged or looking to get married, or women that are married. What about a woman who is obviously single? She's not thinking about getting married in the next maybe year or two, but she associates sex with fear and sex with pain. Do you have anything for women like that who maybe because again, I imagine that if someone's been grown up in an environment where you associate sex with shame and sex with fear, there's a lot of deprogramming that needs to be done from as soon as possible. So when would you advise such a woman who's maybe is not thinking about marriage now, but she's got like she associates sex with her? Would you still recommend she kind of start seeking out like some of the services that you offer, or would you wait
Yeah.
until yeah?
Absolutely. So women in that position are still welcome to join my course. I do say that I only feel comfortable for a woman to join if she plans to use all of the content in my course for the purposes of engaging in sex in the future, whenever it happens to be with her future husband. I lay that out very clearly in the webinar as well. And if I ever get like messages about my course, you know, some women might happen to mention, I'm really struggling to have sex with my boyfriend. I simply say to them, personally, this is someone that I can refer you on to. So I have a couple of other vaginismus coaches that are not Muslim that work with women, but it's just not something that I personally feel comfortable helping someone to have sex outside of marriage, just based on my own beliefs, not in a judgmental way at all. But if it's a woman who is not interested in getting married right now, but knows that she has a fear of sex and knows that she does want to remain a virgin or not engage in sex outside of marriage. So she knows that she will be engaging in sexual activity with her future husband, but she doesn't have plans for that right now. I still invite them to join because, as you mentioned earlier, I do break my course down into 3 phases. So phase 1 is more of the kind of mental and emotional preparation. It's called Understand and Release Your Fear, because that's the main cause of vaginismus, is a fear. It could be a fear of pain, it could be a fear of bleeding, could be a fear of pregnancy. There are so many different types of fears. So we break that down in the first phase. What actually is your fear? And I kind of help them to reframe their thoughts around the fear. So that's phase 1. So that's relevant to any woman, whether she's married or not. The second phase is called Prepare for Confident Sex. And that involves helping a woman to understand her female sexual anatomy and how it works, helping her to learn how to train her pelvic floor muscles to relax, helping her to insert objects into her own vagina based on knowing how to relax her pelvic floor muscles. So that phase helps a woman, for example, to use tools known as dilators. These are tools that are similar in shape to a tampon, but they come in different sizes and different lengths, so that a woman can practice inserting them into her own vagina in a pain-free way to help her build her confidence to transition to intercourse. And then the final phase is called phase 3, transition to intercourse. Once a woman feels comfortable and confident with inserting dilators into her own vagina, I then help her on how to then transition to intercourse gradually so that it's pain-free.
And with the 3 phases, is it something that, I mean, how long would the course take? Is it, can you, like in terms of the content, how many, is it days, weeks, months?
Great question. So when a woman joins, she gets lifetime access to the course. So she can have access to it for as long as she needs. I don't take access away. It's a self-paced course. So in terms of how long it takes, it really depends on the woman, how consistent she is with accessing the lessons. You get all the lessons immediately. So I don't kind of drip feed any of it. You get all of it in one go. A woman, and it's kind of laid out in an order. So you would do lesson 1, lesson 2, and that kind of thing. So you get lifetime access. It's self-paced. Typically, women who join the course on its own, they're having to do it on their own in a self-paced way, but they also get a private Facebook group where they can ask me any questions if they're struggling with anything at any point during the course. What I've seen is women who join the course on its own take roughly 8 to 12 weeks to complete the whole course if they are being consistent with, you know, watching the video lessons, practicing with the dilators, asking me questions in the private Facebook group, and doing it in that way. Women will take longer if they're not being that consistent, or if they're kind of like coming up with excuses, or if they are allowing their fear to take over, sort of thing, and they are not consistently asking me questions. So if a woman is struggling and she doesn't tell me in the Facebook group, I can't know to help her. But I've always said, if you're struggling, please ask me in the Facebook group. And there are quite a lot of women who do that, who are struggling and say, look, I'm struggling to transition from the 5th dilator to the 6th one. What can I do? And then I can answer them, that sort of thing. Or they might be like, I I did really well with all the dilators. They were really easy, but every time I transition to intercourse, there's a block. There's something, there's kind of like a mismatch. So I can help them with that. Another thing that I want to mention is sometimes a woman won't be successful with just the course because she needs some extra personalized support. There is either some kind of more deeply ingrained fear, some kind of emotional block that is preventing her from taking action or preventing her from transitioning to intercourse. So with those women, I invite them to join my coaching program because I do this technique known as EFT. It stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, which helps a woman to kind of tap on certain acupressure points in their body to help them release any kind of blocked negative emotion that is causing the fear.
Lovely. And just for the benefit of some people that's joining a bit late, I'm speaking to Amirah Zaky, a sex educator and vaginismus coach. I'm speaking a little bit about her career as a vaginismus expert and some of the services that she offers. She's got a really good website, Amirah, AmirahZaky.com. So definitely check that out, as well as her YouTube page. Yes, I wanted to, again, that's good. I wanted to lay out some of the courses that you offer. I've got my docket of questions. I'm trying to be quite professional today. What was the next one I wanted to ask? Yes. Can we talk about your upcoming book? Is that something that you're happy to talk about? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know you've been speaking a little bit offline that you're planning to write a sex education book for Muslims. Can you tell us a little bit about what the book is about, the intended audience, and what inspired you to write this book? I know that's probably like 3 questions in one, but anyway, go ahead.
No, yeah, it's a great question. So I have wanted to write a book for a long time, and I even worked with a sister named Naima B. Roberts. She kind of helped me try to formulate my idea. This was like at least 2 years ago that I started working with her. And the original idea for my book was specifically to help women overcome vaginismus. So it was going to be a very niche book. Specifically, if you have vaginismus, this is the book for you. And then I kind of started writing the book and I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, this is not the book I want to write. I do want to help women overcome vaginismus. But if I write this book, it's as though I'm saying overcoming vaginismus is the end of the journey. So you overcome vaginismus, you know how to have pain-free sex, it's comfortable, on your way. Then I thought, that's not what sex is about. Sex is meant to be pleasurable. So yes, if a woman is experiencing painful sex, the first goal is to help her make it comfortable, make it pain-free. That's always what I do, is I help them get to that first goal. But that's just the very start of the journey. There are so many more opportunities available to explore when it comes to sex. And I was like, that's the book I want to write, because growing up in my own household, in my own kind of Muslim community, sex was very much taboo. It was never really talked about. There was always kind of like a negative connotation when talking or thinking about sex. There was always kind of shame or guilt associated around it. You know, the female body wasn't really thought of in a positive way. And I was like, if I potentially had the right sex education, if I was able to speak about it openly with either my own parents or my own Muslim community, I maybe wouldn't have ended up with vaginismus. I would have been able to look forward to my own wedding night. I would have been able to enjoy sex and learn more about my body and how to make it pleasurable. So I was like, this is the book that I feel is missing in the Muslim community, a book where we can talk about sex openly. It doesn't need to be vulgar. It can be very positive, because I really want Muslims especially to see sex as a gift from Allah, because it's a gift from Allah. Allah created sex, and I don't believe that talking about sex needs to be taboo at all. I really feel like Muslims should be able to talk about sex just like they can talk about anything else. Like if I were to say to a female friend of mine, a Muslim female friend, if I were to say to her, let's go out for a coffee, that is really easy for me to do. I want to be able to speak to her and say, let's talk about how to enjoy our sex lives. We don't need to go into like the nitty-gritty details. It's not like that. It's more about not feeling shame when talking about sex. That's what my kind of mission is, because I really feel if we can talk about sex openly and without shame, it will, inshallah, prevent a lot of problems between spouses when they get married. Because that's what I'm seeing in the work that I do, is it's not just the fear of sex. Sometimes the vaginismus is caused from shame about a woman feeling shame about her own body, a woman feeling like she's not entitled to experience sexual pleasure. So there's so many other things that need to be tackled. And I really felt like I wanted this book to be a lot more comprehensive and not be a book where there's just like a bunch of like hadith and Quran quotes, because that exists. I wanted it to just be like this. I wanted it to be a book where you could read it and it can kind of be like a manual of like a how-to manual, how to have sex for the first time and look forward to it and make it pain-free, how to then explore different types of sex, how to actually enjoy sex with your husband, how to talk about sex before you even get married with your like potential spouse. So all the questions that Muslims have about sex, but they have nowhere to go, I kind of want it to be in one book. And I want it to be really empowering for men and women to read the book and think, I feel so blessed to be Muslim, because being Muslim is enabling me to feel empowered in the bedroom and in my sex life, rather than the opposite, because some Muslims think that their religion prevents them from fully enjoying and engaging in sex.
Very well said. I liked what you said about I was just going to praise myself and say it was a brilliant question, but you gave a brilliant answer. But I liked what you said about you didn't want to just end at overcoming vaginismus. It's going to pleasure and trying to, that might be an issue a lot of women are some women are struggling with, but then that's not the end goal. It's not, okay, you've got painless sex. Now, how can you enjoy it and experience pleasure? And that's something which I've noticed a lot, that when I see or hear religious women, whether Muslim, Christian, Jewish, what have you, speaking about their sexual experiences, oftentimes is sex and pain or sex and fear. There's a lot of like negative connotation towards sex, and even just to come out of that and where it's painless or where they don't have no fear and there's no shame attached to sex. For me, that's still not liberating enough, because it's like you said, the sex should be pleasurable. So how can you go beyond, okay, where there's no pain, but if it's not pleasurable, then it's still like, okay, it's just a mechanical, it's just just two bodies coming together, but you're not actually enjoying it. Whereas if the conversation is moved to it being a pleasurable experience, and that's how people understand and think about sex or intercourse, however you want to call it, then I think even people will be more excited and want to kind of improve and have a better, fulfilling relationship. So I think that's important. And I'm always quite shocked, because again, with the early Muslim communities, they didn't have this mindset. Obviously, a lot has changed since, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But even before his time with the Arabs, intimacy was not seen as, or it wasn't supposed to be like painful for the woman or or shameful for the woman, or something that is just a man's right. Yes, there are a number of, unfortunately, communities of men who, and even especially in religious circles, who just concentrate or just speak solely about men's right to pleasure, and not many people obviously advocate for women's right to pleasure. So it's important that, I think, rather than waiting for men to kind of speak on behalf of women, I think like women like yourself to kind of continue educating and empowering women, that they not only feel entitled to painless sex and overcome fear and overcome shame, but they can enjoy pleasurable sex. So I think that's very important. So I liked how you're coming from, okay, there's a problem or there's an issue. Not only we're going to resolve that, but let's get to where you can enjoy intimacy, you can enjoy sex. And I think that's very important. The same way, if you were to ask Muslims about like love and romance, there isn't that negative connotation. Yes, we know outside the frame of marriage it's not allowed, but there isn't that negative connotation because the way love and romance has been marketed. So a number of religious women are more than happy to read a romantic book, even by a non-Muslim, because when you think about love, you think about generally the positive connotations to do with love. You don't think of heartbreak. If every time people thought about love was, I might get my heart broken, this might happen to me, then people would be scared of love. Right. Do you understand what I'm getting at? And I'm saying that kind of framework isn't really happening when we speak about sex and intimacy, or actually, let's be a bit explicit, not intimacy, intercourse, because people use intimacy as a euphemism for intercourse sometimes, and sometimes they just use it just for emotional intimacy. And the problem with that is that when you have like discussions about intimacy, yes, you might attract, and sometimes it's helpful, especially online with Instagram, blocking people who use like sex and stuff like that. It can be useful in terms of marketing purposes, but the messaging sometimes is not very clear, because when people hear intimacy, they might just think about having a good relationship or emotional connection with their partner. But the act of sex, how do we debunk those ideas and those myths and those misconceptions that it's something that's just for men, or it's not pleasurable? So it's good that sometimes we have to be quite explicit in the language that we're using without, like you said, being, well, without being vulgar, but I admittedly sometimes my language can be a bit crude, so that's something I need to work
I
on.
think Marcel, I think it's your unique style, and I think you draw people towards you for being kind of authentically you. You're not kind of filtering yourself, which is great. I noticed that me myself, I don't know whether it's because I'm a woman, maybe it is. I'm having to constantly double check myself and think, is this okay to post? And maybe I should allow myself to be a bit more open. And I have come a long way, like I mentioned, since that first YouTube video where I could hardly even say the word penis and vagina. I can say it now, but I am finding that I don't want to be crude or vulgar, but I do want to be I want to express myself fully and not have a filter when I talk about these topics, because there's already too many filters when talking about sex or thinking about sex. So yeah, another thing, and just in relation to your point, is I find that in the Muslim community, Muslims are told, like especially like when they are kind of coming up to the like teenage years, they're told, you know, sexual desire is bad. Don't look at the opposite sex. You know, if you want to have sex, wait till you get married. Any sexual urges you have, just push them down. They are wrong. They are sinful. That kind of thing. And on the other end, what Muslims are seeing in the media, in movies, is that sex is this amazing thing. Like it feels so great. There are fireworks, all of that kind of thing. And so they're having these two polar opposites messages when it comes to sex. And they're told sexual desire is bad, push it down, wait till you're married. When you're married, you can enjoy yourself. And they're seeing other people who are not married already enjoying themselves. So even if a Muslim does manage to save him or herself and not have sex outside of marriage, when they do get married, if they've never been taught about sex, both the mechanics and the kind of mental and emotional side of sex, if they've never been taught those things, they're going into a marriage expecting it to be amazing and fireworks, and then ending up usually being disappointed. One or the other, if not both, will be disappointed. So I think it's really unfair to just kind of say to Muslims or teach Muslims who are growing up, avoid sex, but then never talk about it and say you'll get to have fun when you're married. And then they get married hoping it's going to be amazing, but they don't know how to make it amazing until they educate themselves. And I find it's causing a lot of issues in a marriage. Sex isn't everything in a marriage, but it's a big part of marriage. And the fact of the matter is most Muslims who do manage to save themselves from marriage, and it is a very hard thing to do in the day and age that we live in, because sex is everywhere and sexual desire is normal. But if they do manage to save themselves and have sex, and they don't know how to do it, they're trying to do this act and be intimate with their spouse, and maybe one spouse has a higher desire than the other and they don't know how to navigate the differences. It causes so many issues mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and I really feel like it's so unfair. We're doing a disservice to the Muslim community if we just say don't think about sex until you're married. I think the more you think about sex and learn about sex before you're married, inshallah, the better your married life will be and sex life will be. So I think that we can prevent a lot of problems beforehand. But if someone is currently married, it's not like sex education needs to stop now that you're married. In fact, sex education is like lifelong, learning how to get better at it. Just like I think I shared a clip from yourself and the village auntie, where she was saying sex is a form of worship. It is. And just like with any other form of worship, we want to get better at it. We want to pray better. We want to understand Quran better. We want to give more charity. We want to get better at all of those. We need to be treating sex the same way. If we're not married, educating ourselves about sex. And if we are married, educating ourselves about sex and how to get better at it.
Yeah, very well said. And I think, yeah, it's very well said. If there's anything I can add to that, I think even when on my understanding, when we're thinking about education as well, is having a holistic understanding about the religion as well. And I think what happens with a number of Muslims, both in this country and obviously abroad, is that when they look at Islam, it's just like transaction based. It's just rule based. It's very rigid. This is halal. This is haram. Now everyone knows, like in terms of what the parameters are with anything and everything, generally speaking. But then, like any type of relationship in life, you kind of will try and make the most out of it, what you can, kind of thing. But not going into every relationship that you have, and I'm talking about even with friends or marital relations. can I do this? Is this halal? Is this haram? And you're acting like a robot. And I just think that didn't exist with early Muslim communities.
Mm.
There were people that struggled with desire. There's some people that obviously committed fornication and adultery. There's people that drank alcohol. Everyone has got different issues, but they were
Mm.
still treated as human beings by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereas I think with a lot of the Muslim community nowadays, it's like the more quote unquote religious you become, people feel, especially in the realm of sex and sexuality, you become asexual, especially prior to
Mm.
marriage. You become like an angel. And if you've got
Yeah.
these desires, or you're troubled by these desires, or you're struggling with these desires, you must have shaitan that's just overpowering you. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Not
Yeah.
realizing that everyone has got struggles and everyone's got issues, whether in marriage, outside of marriage, what have you, everyone's got issues, but it doesn't make you less of a Muslim.
I
And
agree with you.
ultimately, I think it's about concentrating your relationship with Allah first and foremost, rather than a lot of people focusing on their relationship with their fiqh books or what their sheikh
Mm.
says, because they're thinking about what would their sheikh say about them, what would the Muslim community say about them, what would their family or their culture, rather than if you're thinking about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He knows your struggles, He knows what you're going through, you have a very different, you're going to be easy on yourself as well. That's not to say that you're going to just be reckless and be like, God will forgive me.
Exactly.
But at the same time, when you're struggling, you know that Allah knows that you're struggling, what you're going through. So you're not going to be as hard on yourself as human beings would be, because naturally they can just see actions. Do you understand what
Mm.
I'm getting at? They don't know
Yeah.
so that's why I think as Muslims, a lot of our sex education needs to include Allah. What I mean by that is that having Allah in the conversation a lot. Whereas nowadays,
100%.
when people speak about sex or teach Islam, it's just, if you notice, even like the words people are using, the references, they're just quoting sheikhs, scholars, which is valid. Don't get me wrong with their opinion or their fatwa, but they're not thinking about. You're not thinking why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Something is haram not because the imam says it's haram or
Yeah.
the sheikh says it's haram. It's because Allah's prohibited it. So you're going to try and stay within the realms of what He said that you can't do, and that obviously which He said you can do, which is a lot. You try and
Exactly.
explore
Yeah.
that and enjoy it. So it's just, I think it's just a mindset that I just find it very especially when I speak to non-Muslims and they will say things like religion oppresses sexuality or pleasure oppresses women. Then I always put the question back to them, like, which religion are you speaking about?
Mm. Yeah.
Like, it's not
Exactly.
Islam from my understanding. If you're speaking about Christianity, I can't speak on behalf of Christianity. If you're speaking on behalf of some religious figures, well, again, especially from Islamic perspective, no individual apart from the Prophet ﷺ encompasses the religion. So you
Exactly.
can't say because some Muslims are behaving a certain way, this is what Islam teaches. So that's why I think even as Muslims, we shouldn't be ashamed of our religion. Because
Mm.
you think you find that a lot in people, rather than wanting to speak about religion, it's we speak about spirituality, we speak about energy, we speak about the
Yeah.
universe, because these are more palatable terms that people now can kind of like accept. But when you mention
Yeah.
even Allah and God, let's not speak about that. Let's just speak about the male female energy connection kind of thing. So that's something that also I'm kind of noticed as well. So we have to kind of be quite clever with how we're kind of like educating and empowering people. I did actually
Yeah,
have
on
two.
that note, I just wanted to say that, yeah, what I've seen is that a lot of Muslims think that sex and Allah are separate, that you can't talk about Allah and sex in the same sentence. That's what I'm seeing. And one thing I notice is that it's really important to remind Muslims that even the prophets had sexual desire. Like in the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, that, you know, the master's wife approached him and she had a sexual desire, but so did he. In the ayah, it says that I would have succumbed, meaning he had a sexual desire, if it went from the mercy of my God, of Allah. So I think what you're saying is really important because the point that I want to share is that if the best of people, our prophets, had sexual desire and we are not as good as them, we are going to have sexual desire, and it doesn't make us a bad person, it makes us human. And Allah put that sexual desire within you. You're meant to feel that sexual desire, you're meant to feel that emotion, but the test and the struggle and the kind of inner jihad is how are you going to act based on that feeling. Just like if someone feels the feeling of anger, you have a choice of how to act. You could do something violent, or you could, you know, take a breath, sit down, try and like be on your own for a bit and calm down. Like you have choices in terms of your actions, but we don't always have choices based on our feelings, because a lot of the time they just kind of show up. And some Muslims are taught, if you have a so-called bad feeling like a sexual desire or sexual urge or anger, just push it down, suppress it, push it down. And that's going to only take you so far, because the more you push down those feelings, they're going to bottle up, you're going to explode, and it may cause you to do an even worse action than if you kind of allowed yourself to notice that emotion in the first place, get curious about it, feel that feeling, and decide that I need to, if I'm struggling with this emotion and I'm scared that I might commit an action that I won't be happy with or that Allah won't be pleased with, I don't have to overcome this emotion on my own. Like you were saying about the relationship with God, I can, if Allah put this feeling within me, he can also take it away. So I need to lean on his mercy and ask Allah for his mercy, just like Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam asked Allah for his mercy, because he didn't want to do an action that Allah would not be pleased with.
I love that, and I'm glad you reminded me of, yeah, beautiful story. The best, I mean, Allah says it's the best story in the Quran.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
There's so many lessons in that story in and of itself, and I'm surprised that sometimes I don't really speak about that story enough, because I think that most people know about it, but I don't think a lot of people do. And especially like you said, Allah mentions that Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam desired her, and if it wasn't for seeing the sign of his Lord, he would have succumbed to her. So that shows, and he was the best of people because he's the prophet. And again, understanding that being a Muslim or being religious does not mean that you're asexual. It means that you are trying to submit to the will of Allah. That you have got things, you've got desires, you've got things that maybe you want to do, but that's not wrong in and of itself. It's the fact that you're making a choice to willingly obey Allah, and that's where the reward is. You know, so it's just even when you read the classical books of commentary, classical tafsir of that passage, and when the scholars speak about it, some of them have interpreted and understood that he was so close to even actually having penetration with her that he took his belt buckle off. Now, what did it mean? But when he said he desired her, some said it was a long look. So there was a lot of, and they went into great detail speaking about that. Whereas nowadays, I think a lot of Muslims, the reason why I think a lot of those books haven't been translated is because I think some of the Muslims, even when I spoke to one of my teachers when I was in Egypt, he was like, when you go back to the UK, these type of stories don't tell the masses. And I was like, why? And it's because for me, it was like, I saw the humanity in Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And it was this idea, no, to protect people, it's like I understood where he's reasoning, but I didn't agree with it. It's this idea, if people see that, you know, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam was even close to, even according to what some of the scholars have said, then people are going to feel that, oh, there's no hope for me, then I might as well just do anything. And that's a problem. And that's not the lesson, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it, who are we to kind of then say, no, actually, it didn't exist, he didn't have desire. You know, so that's why it can be quite problematic when people are trying to censor what Allah has revealed in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even when you think about the story as well, how it came about, the verse, sorry, one of the scholars mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was reciting some verse in the Quran speaking about like some of the prohibitions, and then the companions asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they just mentioned, they said, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if Allah revealed like a story to soothe our hearts? And then Allah revealed Surah to Yusuf, which is the only surah which from beginning to end just focuses on like a story of one of the prophets, whereas obviously a lot of them, it's a beautiful story. And not only in the struggle that Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam had, even the fact that you had a woman who was initiating sexual contact. So this idea that women lack desire as well, that's debunked by Allah himself. Did you understand me? And then the problem is that some people have taken that and run along with it, like the Jezebel story from the Bible, to say that, you know, that's why we need to control female sexuality, because they could all be like the wife of Aziz, and they could be soliciting, you know, men. But then I always ask the question, you're not attractive like Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, it's not going to happen to you. So it just shows that the Quran and the surah affirms female sexuality, affirms female desire, affirms that women can be overcome by their desire, where they act, you know, which people normally expect from men. And it wasn't just only the wife of Aziz, who's known as Zuleika, but also the other women. Remember when they cut their hands?
Yeah, yeah.
So it just shows, and they were captivated by beauty. Everyone associates that with men, but the only example we have in the Quran itself of someone being overwhelmed by desire, where they was potential, they did commit a sin, was women. So again, it's not to cast any aspersion against women. It just shows that this is a human condition that both men have difficulty with and women have difficulty with. So when people are kind of shocked that a woman, you know, especially a Muslim woman, has desire or even asks a question about intimacy, it's like, astaghfirullah. It's like, what, all of this religiosity, where are you getting this from? Because again, this is not something that, if you read the Quran and read the stories of the early Muslims, they didn't have this, like, I can't believe this Muslim woman is asking this question. I can't believe this Muslim woman. You know, and that's, I think, something that can only be changed when we have more like holistic education, which is people understanding what it means to be a Muslim, and it's not meaning to be like an asexual kind of individual. So, but I'm glad you reminded me of that.
And just following on, because I've been listening to the surah more and more and trying to understand it more and more, not just based on the kind of translation, but trying to put myself as though I was there at the time of the Prophet, seeing it like a story or like a movie, and trying to understand things and putting myself in that situation. And one thing that I took away from it after doing a bit of reflection on the ayahs is Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam said that prison is more love to me than what these people, these women are calling me to do. And like you said, he saw the signs, he saw the evidence from Allah, knowing that if he chose solitude and chose prison, that would be better for him than engaging in an act, knowing that that would be displeasing to God. But not only that, like he did that, even though it was a struggle for him, he did that. And then later on, we see in the story how much he was rewarded for that in this life, like him becoming a leader, like in charge of the kind of storehouses and that kind of thing. And so I really want to make people aware that as much as it is a struggle, of course you will be rewarded in the next life, inshallah, but you will see it play out in your own life in terms of how much blessings you have in store for you, in terms of why Allah put you here in the first place on earth. I believe that Allah put us here to obviously fulfill our purpose, which is to worship him, but alongside that is to be creative and to be leaders. And that's what ended up happening to Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. He didn't give in to that struggle, as much as it was a struggle. He didn't give in, like he didn't kind of allow his sexual desire to cause him to do an action that he wouldn't be happy with himself and that Allah wouldn't be happy with. He kind of fought himself, did that inner jihad, decided prison is better for me. And it was the prison and the struggle of prison that helped him to be able to interpret the dreams and then become the leader. So, you know, if you're struggling with that, like especially I find that a lot of single women tell me that they're really struggling and they think that marriage is going to solve all their answers because they'll be able to have sex. It doesn't always, because there are other problems that can happen. Right now, it's about focusing on how can I use this sexual energy or this sexual desire and transform it into a positive, creative energy in terms of both fulfilling my purpose of worshipping Allah alongside being a leader, impacting people, whether it's my own family or my own community, that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I love that, and I do agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, yeah, like this idea that, I mean, you have it with brothers as well, that this idea that when they marry, they might not say the one, but then all of their issues that they were feeling prior to being married will kind of, but no, you have other issues, you have other struggles. And I think, not on the whole self-love, but I think having again, concentrating on your relationship with Allah first and foremost, because all of the stories from, we mentioned Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, from the stories and the trials and tribulations with Maryam, with Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, all of their struggles, who did they turn to? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't turn to themselves. It's not about self-belief. It's not even about other men. It's to save them. It's not to get a new husband or once I get this. That's not to say I'm not trying to belittle human relationships, but that's not where you put the source of your happiness or to overcome anything. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that should be the focal point. And that's something which, again, reading the stories of the early, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, early companions, when they speak about issues and when they're going through things, even when there's disputes, you notice that they're always speaking about Allah, by Allah, such and such. Allah's in the forefront of their mind. And reading the Quran, when you read the Quran, if you're reading it, the foremost thing that you're supposed to be thinking about is your connection, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost. That's the most important thing. Everything else comes after. And someone might think, okay, how could even Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam prefer prison to, you know, losing his job and now being imprisoned, and he was like in the master's house and this, that, and the other. If you love Allah more than anyone and anything else, displeasing him is worse than doing any other act. You understand? So when you put in comparison, everything's relative. Then it's like, okay, I can understand. But because I think, especially within the Muslim community, we've become obsessed with, and I have to be careful how I say this, like the system of Islam, as opposed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having that relationship. We're thinking about the system, meaning other Muslims, and how the Ummah is going to see us. Do you understand? When you will have issues even amongst Muslims, because even if you're in a Muslim environment or Muslim community, not everyone is going to get along. Not everyone is going to. So, like, you see a lot of issues between, okay, Muslims and non-Muslims because we're a minority. You have issues between men and women. You're having issues between even family members. And again, the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam's story is beautiful of that, because this is a man who was the son of a prophet, but his own brothers, blood brothers, wanted to try and get him killed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? There's so many like lessons in that story. I could spend 2-3 hours speaking on that story. I'm going to move on in and of itself, but there's so much things to learn from that, and to realize that not this idea that if I'm a good person, I'm not going to, and I'll use the word like experience challenges. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have a trial. So your trial now might be sexual desire. After, it might be, like you mentioned, about mismatching desire when you're married. It might be something else later. But having desires or having challenges or sexual challenges doesn't make you a bad person or less of a Muslim. It's just something that you kind of need to deal with and overcome. And even when you're dealing with these challenges and overcoming that, inshallah, you're getting rewarded for it as well. So it's a double blessing. So again, it's just the outlook that I think, again, with Muslims. The funny thing is, I like to talk about Allah with people who love Allah, but other than that, I don't really like to talk about it, just because people think, okay, you're preaching and this, that, and the other. But it's like, those who know, those who don't know, then it's just no point kind of explaining. But let's go back to vaginismus. Sorry, I kind of went overboard on that. Yeah, we spoke about, I asked you about your book. Yes, I saw one of your posts. Again, you don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable with asking it. Where you was asking people about I think the subtitle or the title of the book, and the prioritizing pleasure. Have you come to a conclusion what you want to call the book or the book title, or is that still ongoing where you're still asking your followers and things like that?
Yeah, really great question. So yeah, there was a period of time when I was really stuck on what I wanted the title of my book to be and the kind of subtitle and that sort of thing. So I was going through a period of time where I was coming up with all these ideas for titles, and I was like manically writing different titles down and trying it out, and none of them sat well with me, but I would always like put them on my stories and get my followers to vote, and again, still none of them sat well with me. And then I eventually landed on the priority of pleasure, and I thought that's the one. Like, I mean, it's a working title still, it might change, but when I wrote it down and thought about what it means, I loved it because the book is a sex education book, but it's not just going to be about sex. It's going to be about pleasure, and it's not just going to be about sexual pleasure, even though that's the main theme and topic. It's really about showing Muslims that, okay, let me go back a little bit. Some Muslims, I believe, think that if they sacrifice themselves in this life and they stop themselves from experiencing pleasure, then Allah is somehow going to be more pleased with them, and therefore they're going to enter Jannah and experience pleasure in the next life. And obviously all Muslims want that. All Muslims want to get close to Allah. All Muslims want Allah to be pleased with them. All Muslims want to go to Jannah. Perfect. But what I want Muslims to see is that Allah is so generous that He wants us to experience pleasure now and inshallah in the hereafter. So you can have both, and it can be within Islamic principles and with following within Islamic guidelines, and in a way that is pleasing to Allah. And so that's why I wanted it to be called the priority of pleasure, meaning prioritize pleasure in this life, and you still get to experience pleasure, inshallah, in the next life. So it will talk about the mechanics of sex, like how to have sex for the first time in a pain-free way, or if you are able to have sex, but it's just not pleasurable, you don't know how to orgasm, it will talk about the mechanics of it. but I will be, inshallah, kind of fusing in spiritual intimacy, talking about how sex can enable you to get closer to Allah, enable you to get closer to your spouse, enable you to know your own self, know the beauty and gift of your own body. So I've landed on the priority of pleasure. And inshallah, the subtitle is going to be along the lines of how Muslims can enjoy the gift of sex without shame, fear, or pain. Because those are the kind of biggest blocks that I find are preventing Muslims, men or women, from fully accessing the joys and the pleasures of sexual intimacy.
Lovely. Do you mind elaborating what do you mean by shame? The only reason I'm saying this, I think I understand what you mean, but just for the benefit of some people, might be thinking, are you saying that Muslims should be shameless and lose haya? Is that, or again, so do you mind explaining what you mean by shame and why, on how you know, women or men as well can overcome shame to enjoy pleasure?
Yeah, great question. So I don't believe that shame and haya are exactly the same thing. I think that haya essentially is God consciousness in a way where you are thinking about your actions and constantly asking yourself, is this in alignment with Islam? Is this in alignment with what Allah wants me to be doing? So that's what I think haya is being conscious of God in your actions, both in public, in front of other people, but also in private. That's what I see haya as. Shame, in my opinion, as an English word, is very negative. Like, it's like a combination of feeling like embarrassed and kind of like guilt, and like you've done something wrong and you've done something sinful and that you are a bad person if you feel shame. So I don't think that that is the same as haya, because haya is kind of the opposite, because haya is you thinking, if I do this, will Allah be pleased with me? That shows that if you're constantly trying to maintain haya, you are a good person, or in the eyes of Allah, you are being a good Muslim. Whereas shame is you deciding for yourself, I did this action and this action was bad and I'm a terrible person. And that is what a lot of Muslims are bringing in. They're bringing in shame, thinking, if I look at my body naked, I'm a bad person. Or if I enjoy sex with my own husband, I'm a bad person. And that's not what I believe Allah wants us to experience. Allah doesn't want us to experience shame when educating ourselves about sex, because He created it. So we're educating ourselves about something He created. Allah doesn't want us to experience shame when we are educating ourselves about our own bodies, or looking at, especially for a woman, looking at her own vulva. It's something that Allah created as beautiful, so there shouldn't be shame. Shame and beauty don't need to go together, sort of thing. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I liked how you explained, and the reason why I intentionally asked that question, I wanted you to clarify, which you did, about understanding, obviously, haya, and because it's sometimes translated as modesty, shame, and explaining how we use the English definition, understand is not necessarily in line with the Islamic concept of haya. So that's what I wanted to, I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question as well, because I think someone might read the title and think how Muslims can enjoy the gift of sex without shame, and they might assume that I'm promoting like extramarital sex, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, you know, you don't have to have shame, you can go ahead and kind of go and have sex without being married. I'm not promoting that in any way. There are Muslims that do that, and it's their decision, it's their choice, it's between them and Allah. My book is never going to go and say, you know, let yourself loose, do whatever you want. My book's not going to say that, but it is going to say, if you are single and struggling, here's how to channel your sexual energy. If you are married and you're struggling with your sex life, here's how to enjoy it more. If you are suffering from painful sex, here's how to overcome it. If you're afraid of sex, here's how to overcome it. So that's, inshallah, what the book's going to be about. So the kind of how-to, the manual, step-by-step, infusing, inshallah, your relationship with Allah and spiritual intimacy. And I really am going to be very intentional. If I do ever in the book reference an ayah from the Quran or a hadith, it's going to be very limited. I don't want it to be a book full of like hadith and, you know, Quranic quotes. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I found that when I've been looking online for sex education books for Muslims, that's what I find like half the book is just Quranic quotes and hadith, which is fine, but I find that it makes Muslims, I don't know, maybe this is just me, it makes Muslims see sex as just an act of worship, and then when they just see it like that, they don't see that it's meant to be pleasurable. So for example, if a Muslim is trying to educate themselves on how to pray better, they're not always thinking about their own pleasure right now. They're thinking about, I'm doing this prayer because I want to get to Jannah. Whereas when it comes to sex, I really want them to see, like, you can have this beautiful connection with Allah and it can make you a better Muslim, but it can also help you in your own life with your connection with other humans in your life, like your own spouse, or in terms of educating your own kids. So I don't want it to be just like fully like in your face with Quranic quotes and hadith, because that's what I get this a lot in terms of like questions. And I've even had to like change my kind of bio because I get so many like thick questions about sex, and I'm not a scholar. I don't have like an Islamic degree or anything, but when I'm trying to learn how to improve my own sex life, or if I'm trying to find out something to help a customer or client, before I go and give them an answer, if I don't know the answer, I will ask myself, okay, does this align with my own values and understanding about Islam and understanding about Allah? And if it does, I'm going to go ahead and give that answer, like teach them that. But if I really have like a doubt, like is what I'm educating, if I have a really big doubt about it, then I will go and ask a sheikh or a scholar and get it clarified, someone that I'm happy with, and then I can go and talk about it. But I'm not going to like spend ages and ages and ages researching all the fiqh, because that would require me to do some kind of like Islamic degree or something to become like a scholar in that sense. And that it's just not me, like it's not what I'm here to do. I really feel like I just want to get the message out there that if you're Muslim, Allah wants you to enjoy sex when you're married, and if you're not married, Allah wants you to use your sexual energy in different ways and still educate yourself about sex.
I love that, what you said. To be honest, it sounded like you was describing my book, A Taste of Honey.
I have your book right
no,
here.
no. But in all seriousness, that and the funny
No,
thing is,
your book is extremely helpful for
no,
me
no.
when I'm writing my
Yeah.
book, because then I know, oh yeah, Habib has all the. So if you want the book with all the kind of Quran and Hadith, get Habib's book. But I don't want to write the same book as you, because that's not me. You've put your own style in this, and it's great. And I'm reading this book because if I say something like, engage in oral sex, you've got everything a Muslim needs to know and all the Hadith and Quranic quotes about oral sex. And so then I'm gonna inshallah, you don't know this, but you know it now, I'm gonna be mentioning your name a few times in my book, inshallah.
I appreciate that. No, but the reason why I'm saying that is that, and it's quite funny because even when I was, doing the research and writing it, because I knew that a lot of people, the first thing, especially within the Muslim community, would be like, "Who are you?" It's not about me. Again, it's like the question people have is like, "Who are you to be giving this advice or whatever?" So that's why I wanted to demonstrate, because obviously for my time when I was studying in Egypt, that there are a number of different scholars and there are different Quranic verses and hadith speaking about this topic. That's what I wanted to show. But then I can see what you're saying, because even when I look at it, it's more like a reference book, because it's not straightforward, because this overwhelms people with all of these, like, this person said this person said that, this Quranic verse is ayah, and it's like, okay, now I understand, yeah, Islam speaks about sex, but how is that going to help me? And then when I released Kunyaza a couple of years ago, but that was aimed at not even Muslim audience, that was just a general, like you could say, sex manual, just educating people about the African technique. A lot of Muslims picked Kunyaza up, and I was shocked, because A Taste of Honey came out in 2015, which was very, you could say, Islamic centric, shall we say. But I think because I went to so much detail with the research and stuff, I think I lost a lot of people. Whereas when I wrote Kunyaza, which was very just kind of straightforward, kind of easy to read, no references to Quran or Hadith and stuff like that, very, hopefully, easy to follow. More Muslims actually kind of bought into that, which I was okay. It was even something to learn from me, that, like you said, when someone's asking for advice or they need to improve on something, they're not always going to think of, I need something, all the Quranic verses and the Hadith and such and such. So, yeah, because when you were saying what you were saying, I was like, what you're saying, I agree with it, but that was just like describing my book. So, no, I love that. I love the honesty. The second thing I wanted to say, we mentioned, so with the subtitle, you mentioned overcoming, like shame, fear, and pain. You spoke a little bit about shame and explained what that is. We spoke about pain. Can you talk a little bit about fear and why? Again, I'm asking a question that I think I understand, but again, for the benefit of people listening, why would a I'm assuming this is referring to women. If not, correct me. Why would a married woman fear sex? Since it's
Great.
halal, why would she fear sex?
Yeah, great. So many different reasons. One of them could be that she sees sex as something that only her husband is meant to enjoy. And so initially she might willingly accept that that's part of her fate, that she's just meant to be this kind of person engaging in this activity, but not really meant to enjoy it. And she can just see her husband enjoying it. And then she ends up seeing her like seeing herself as though she's kind of sacrificing her own body for his pleasure. And then she ends up seeing sex as a chore, something she has to do or give to someone else. And then she doesn't enjoy sex. And so she dreads sex. She fears having to have sex, or she fears her husband initiating sex, or fears her husband requesting sex. So that's one part of fear. Another fear is the fear of pain itself. So when we understand the fear of pain, we can treat the fear, and then treat how to make sure it's not painful. So sometimes that's the fear. Another fear is women feeling afraid of how their body looks, literally just like kind of how women are bombarded in the media by this kind of so-called ideal standard of what the kind of sexy body should look like, that kind of thing. So a fear of how their own body looks, or how their husband thinks about how their body looks, that sort of thing. It could be a fear that they are committing sin. So for example, when I in one of my posts, I asked women, what do you want from your husband in terms of for your sexual pleasure? And a lot of women said they want more oral sex. So I went ahead and put a post, and one of the tips was, do more oral sex. And then I had all this backlash of, oh my God, it's haram. How can you use your mouth to recite Quran and then use the same mouth to, anyways. And so there's a fear of like committing sin with certain sexual activities. So there are so many different fears. It's very individual and unique from woman to woman. There are some similarities, but I want to kind of help women understand where the fears are coming from, and help them to reframe those fears into something that they can look forward to, it's a fear that they don't need to have, because when you overcome the fear, you're able to enjoy the activity, enjoy sexual pleasure with your spouse.
Lovely. And have you got any more courses that, I know you obviously you're working on the book, but is there any more courses or anything upcoming that maybe people should be aware of that you want to promote or talk about?
Yeah, great question. Right now, it's kind of like in the works in my brain. So it's nothing out there like physically, but I really want to create either like a membership or something where it can be like an open space for women, especially, to talk about sex in terms of how to overcome those fears, overcome shame, overcome pain, enjoy sex more with their spouse. So it will be specifically for women, because I think women need this more. I feel like men don't have as many of these issues in terms of, they don't typically fear sex. They don't have a lot of shame in relation to sex. They're not typically experiencing pain. I know there are other sexual disorders, but it's mostly women who have those emotions like fear and shame, or are experiencing pain, or don't know how to orgasm, don't know how to enjoy sexual pleasure. So I wanted to create something like that, but it's like in the works of how would I go about doing it, like all the logistics and that kind of thing. So inshallah, in hopefully the near future. Yeah, so it's not anything right now, but what I am going to be launching inshallah very soon is regular videos to my YouTube channel. A very kind brother reached out to me and said, would you like me to edit your videos? And he wants to do this for free. If he's watching, he knows who he is, and he wants to edit my videos for free, inshallah, so that I can put some good quality sex education videos for Muslims on YouTube for them to, it will be similar to what's in my book, but inshallah my book will be a lot more comprehensive, but my YouTube channel will give like tips here and there on how to enjoy sex, how to orgasm, how to overcome painful sex, kind of like how to on YouTube, inshallah.
Lovely, fantastic. That's we've covered a lot. I've found that really informative and enlightening as well, and I hopefully people have as well. Definitely, I recommend people to check out Sister Amirah Zaky's page. It's just your full name, isn't it? Amirah Zaky, Amira. Zaky, and check out her website. She's got, again, great videos, informative. And she also does like, I like how you do on your post where you like the scroll through where you're speaking about like giving people like a guide in terms of how to not only overcome vaginismus but educating people about pleasure and stuff like that. So I definitely recommend people to check her out, her page, give her a follow, and yeah, keep on the lookout for upcoming book. Have we got a date likely, or just yeah?
Inshallah, within the next year. So probably maybe April 2022, inshallah. I'm working with a company. They are helping me to write my book. They are helping me to edit my book. They are helping me to create like the cover and all the kind of design elements with publishing. So I have someone there, like I'm paying this company to help me write my book. So I've got the accountability, alhamdulillah. And so inshallah, let's say April, maybe 2022, it should be ready. So in a year, inshallah.
Yeah, so definitely check that out, and I'm looking forward to when that comes out. So yeah, thank you again very much, sister, for gracing us with your presence and like imparting your knowledge and your wisdom. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch soon. So yeah, just want to leave it. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Habib, for inviting me to do this. I've
No
really
worries.
enjoyed talking to you.
No worries. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.